Hey everyone, welcome to the HBCU Game Day Podcast. Tolly Carr along with Stephen J. Gaither. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes. You can find it on SoundCloud, TuneIn, and always at hbcugameday.com. Well, Stephen, the football season is coming to a close. It is Celebration Bowl week.
What happened?
I don't know about you, man, but this season went by like very fast. Like it feels like it was hot last week, like it was August, September. Right. But we are knocking on the door of Christmas, and Saturday afternoon, someone is going to be the national champion of black college football, and this is going to be one heck of a matchup. North Carolina A&T and Grambling. What goes into your prediction machine? I know on Friday night you're gonna whip out a big prediction of who's gonna win. What are some of the key areas you're looking at when it comes to this matchup on Saturday?
Oh man, this one is the one that I think everybody's been waiting for. This is potentially the big one if everybody comes to play the way that they think that they should. Grambling's hot right now. They saw him at the Bayou Classic a couple weeks ago, and then when they had Devante Kincade out there, they were running and gunning and just looking great. And then it seems like forever ago since North Carolina A&T played, but they obviously they are in a position to complete a perfect season, which is rare in black college football or any college football. And it just seems like you said, it seems like yesterday I was writing about how there is a chance that maybe they could get to here unbeaten, and they have. So just two dynamic teams, especially on offense at the quarterbacks. You look at Devante Kincade and you look at Lamar Renard. It's we've had the first two Celebration Bowls. We've had a lot of entertainment, a lot of great plays and memorable stuff, but we haven't really had a great quarterback performance. And so I'm thinking that this might be the year that we get it. Of course, we got two really good defenses, and so I'm definitely anticipating this. The one thing I don't think a lot of people are talking about as far as strategic wise is Devante Kincade. If he can make plays with his legs like he did in the last couple of games, I think that Grambling has a lot better shot at this than a lot of people are thinking, because North Carolina A&T hasn't had to really face too many dual threat quarterbacks. I mean, most of the quarterbacks that they faced either have just been purely running quarterbacks, or they haven't really been able to move. And he is one guy who can both pass and run well. And so I think that's going to be something to look for.
Well, I tell you what, the stats are heavily in favor of North Carolina A&T. If this was just like a simulation, but
right,
as they say, that's why you play the game. But just looking at the stats, A&T scores more points. They average just a tick under 4 points more than Grambling does. They give up fewer points, A&T averaging just 12 points on the year that they give up, where Grambling giving up nearly 21 points a game. Not quite there. A&T has picked up more, or averages more yards rushing. Their rushing defense is better by over 20 yards. A&T is a better passing team on average by 30 yards a game. Their passing defense gives up fewer yards. Their passing efficiency is better. They're equal in interceptions, but A&T has some bigger interceptions, more yards returned after the interceptions, more touchdowns, but that's probably inflated when Mac McCain at the beginning of the year was like just returning interceptions for touchdowns the first couple of weeks there. Grambling has a slight edge in field goals. Grambling sacks their opponent much more than A&T does, but A&T gives up a third as many sacks as Grambling does. Renard has only been sacked 10 times this year. Now, of course, they have the all-world left tackle there at A&T who hasn't given up a sack all year long. So I'll be interested to hear what Coach Fobb says when you go against an all-world left tackle. Like, do you even put your best guy on him, or you just send somebody over there and say, good luck, just stay in front of him as best you can? So statistically, most things do favor A&T, But I would say this for Grambling. They've been here before, just last year. A lot of the key players know what it's like to play in this game, although it is a different stadium. Now the Mercedes-Benz Stadium as opposed to the Georgia Dome. So there will be a newness for both teams. And a lot of those A&T guys, or at least some of them at least, were there the year before last as well. But I mean, these two teams, they're connected, Stephen, but they haven't played in a lifetime. The last time these two teams played was 1997. I just saw that today and realized, like, I knew they hadn't played in a while, but I didn't know how long ago it was until I was looking over.
I think was still the coach there.
Look, Puffy and Mace were ruling the charts. A posthumous Notorious B.I.G. was ruling the charts the last time they played in 97. But look, Coach Broadway has coached there. Coach Fobbs, his father, coached there, who's now coaching with him at Grambling. So a lot of connection there, but this is just a perfect matchup. Two of the biggest teams from each conference, and you have that thing that you don't always get, and that's scarcity, so to speak, and it creates value because it's not every year that you see this matchup. So if it's close either way, I think this is a Celebration Bowl that will go down in memory, just because who's there and who's playing.
Yeah, I mean, you look at where we are. You know, if there was no Celebration Bowl, now of course with Grambling being in the Bayou Classic, which starts the same week as the FCS playoffs, even if there was no Celebration Bowl, they probably wouldn't be in there. But if you look at them, I think they're ranked in the top 13, so they're a playoff caliber FCS team. You would think if there was no Celebration Bowl and they had the chance to go to the playoffs. And then you look at North Carolina A&T again, who is unbeaten through 11 games, and they've just they lost Tariq Cohen and arguably they're better off now than they were a year ago when they had one of probably the most explosive player to play black college football since Steve McNair. So. I mean, it's just crazy. And do you think for the last couple of years since they've had the Celebration Bowl, every year these two teams are usually in the Final Four of who's going to get there, even if they don't get there. And the first year, Grambling didn't make it. Last year, A&T didn't make it. Both of them are here this year. You got again Coach Broadway, who coached at North Carolina. Who coached at Grambling before he came back home and is coaching at A&T, and you got Coach, you got Broderick Fobbs, who his dad, Lee Fobbs, was the coach over at North Carolina A&T, and not the greatest at times, and and Coach Broadway, I'm sure you would like to, even though all those old players are gone, you sure you like to show the old team, you go off something good. If you're Coach Fobbs, hey, maybe you want to get a little redemption back for your dad for, maybe folks blaming him for things that maybe you feel weren't in his control. I don't know. I'm putting words in people's mouths, but it makes for a good and compelling game, and that's what you hope for. It's great storylines this year versus maybe the last couple years. There weren't great storylines on both sides. No disrespect to the previous. No, it helps when you have that interconnectivity. Yeah, and it is a sexy matchup. Now, if A&T finishes undefeated, as you mentioned earlier in the show, it's going to be the first time in 74 years that they would go from start to finish without losing a game. 74 years. That's a lot. Like almost leaves you speechless, like 74 years. Wow. Yeah. Well, hey, it is more than just a football game. It is a business. And earlier today, you had a chance to catch up with John Grant, who is the head numero uno when it comes to the Celebration Bowl and the guy that we interact with a lot. So tell us about what you guys talked about. Yeah, so I had a chance to talk to Mr. Grant, who is the executive director of the Celebration Bowl. Talk about the obvious things like playing in the spaceship, as we've dubbed it here, the game's bigger overall meaning and future. So it was a good conversation, and I think you guys are going to learn a lot from it. How excited are you guys to really be the first bowl game that's going to be taking place there?
Well, when you think about the fact that we are opening up the bowl season in a new $1.5 billion facility, a state-of-the-art facility. Let me add that.
Right.
it's an amazing venue. You know, our hats off to Arthur Blank and the Atlanta Falcons for making the investment to build this great structure here in the city of Atlanta. And we're just delighted that we are able to make that available to, to our fans and more importantly to the student athletes that have, worked hard all year long to get to this point and to be able to perform in this venue in front of a national audience on ABC. We're just delighted that the Celebration Bowl is a platform that can deliver that for them.
Right. And so looking at the Celebration Bowl, I know last year after the game, we talked about attendance, and your comments were that the primary focus was on the television and not necessarily concerned about getting 70,000 people in the seats. But looking forward, is that still the same, or are the optics a little bit maybe emphasizing it a little bit more, definitely trying to grow the game?
Well, you always want to grow your game because it's about the fans, and fans are looking for an experience. Mm-hmm. This building provides that experience for them. But then we realize that we have, the task before us also, and the opportunity before us is to educate fans on what having a bowl game means. Right. I mean, we've had, many years where the feature for HBCUs was classics, and classic games, which are generally rivalry games, do serve their purpose without question. Mm-hmm. When you think about at the Division I level, when you think about Alabama versus Auburn in the Iron Bowl, right, that is certainly a great matchup game. However, Alabama and Auburn are playing to get into a bowl game. Mm-hmm. And so having a bowl game is a great opportunity for our fans to go to that next level and get that next level experience, and certainly for our players to also receive that next level experience. That's what they play for. Right.
So how ticket sales so far from what you've seen? I know I understand North Carolina A&T sold out a good bit, if not all, of their allotment of tickets, and Grambling, of course, had a little bit short of a time to work with, but sure they'll catch up. How are ticket sales looking early on as we're a couple of days out from the big game?
Well, you're absolutely correct. North Carolina A&T did sell out of their allotment, and speaking of the Grambling, they had less than 100 tickets left in a short period of time. So that indicates certainly a strong level of interest for their fans to come in and support this. But certainly this game is much bigger than just Grambling and North Carolina A&T. Mm-hmm. It's a representation of the MEAC conference and the SWAC conference, mm-hmm, and those schools, which are great institutions, are really also representing all of the other schools that are in their conference, because one of those conferences, either MEAC or SWAC, will take home the national title, mm-hmm, and their representative will take home that title on behalf of bragging rights for everybody in the conference. And so, we've been pleased with the way our ticket sales have gone. We certainly, still have a few more to sell, and fans need to, if you really want to come and get an opportunity to be at a bowl game that's at an affordable price, this is the one, for it. And as you asked the question earlier, certainly TV ratings matter in a TV business. That's the difference between when you go to the level of a bowl game versus just playing a classic game. Mm-hmm. Because, we were in 15.7 million households last year.
Right.
And that gives more exposure to, the participating schools, the conferences, and their member schools than you could by ever having, 50,000 people sitting in a venue. You want to have that.
Right.
But you really need to also have more and more people interested and watching, which drives the things that really impact these schools, and that's student recruitment.
Right. Right, definitely. You know, as we're looking at it, I know I've just been noticing over the last couple of weeks. I don't see the Air Force Reserve Celebration Bowl up there anymore. Are they still on as a sponsor, or what's going on with that? If you can explain on that, are they still with you guys?
No, the Air Force Reserve, due to budget constraints,
right.
that, Congress has yet to really pass a meaningful budget.
Right.
And so because of budget constraints, they certainly had to step back from the, being from the title sponsorship this year.
Right.
Although they remain supportive and engaged, but they withdrew the title sponsorship for those reasons and those reasons only.
Right. Okay. Got you. And so, what will be, I know we talk about TV and we talk about so what will determine the success of the Celebration Bowl? Because I've been to the first two and I've enjoyed them. Both of them have been great games. And it's, I have to admit, I was probably on the fence when I heard about the announcement, but it's a great, I do think that it's a great game and a great experience. What's going to determine the future of it as we're now heading into game 3 of what was initially a 6-game deal?
Well, let me say, success is determined by 2 factors. Mm-hmm. One, you do have a factor that's attendance-based, but I remind people, ESPN is a media company.
Right. And
college football is media-driven. We don't need to make any mistake about that.
Right.
College football is a major level, and if you look at professional sports, it's all driven by television and their rating. And so, we certainly are committed to making sure that we have, a great number of fans in here to represent this bowl game and to experience the bowl game. But we also, are very clear that we have to drive viewership to create long-term sustainability, because, viewership drives revenue.
Right.
And the more we can grow viewership, then the more the revenue we can drive, which ultimately impacts what we can do with the conferences and the schools going return. If you're not creating those factors that drive the bottom line of the bowl, then you just have a game, just like any other game, and that's not what this game is.
Right. So, again, guys, we're talking with John T. Grant, the executive director of the Celebration Bowl. So this year we have a matchup of the teams who have won the first 2 Celebration Bowls. So you got North Carolina A&T, 2015 Celebration Bowl champs, and they went on to claim the national championship. And then last year, Grambling, the same situation. They won the Celebration Bowl, went on to claim the HBCU national championship. So exciting matchup, exciting matchup for the fans. I mean, how do we top the first 2 years when you have Tariq Cohen running for 300 yards on an empty stomach, and then last year we have the end of that game, which kind of took everybody's breath away and really captured the nation's attention, at least for a while. How do you top that this year?
Well, look, this is probably the best matchup in HBCU college football that you could have. And that's simply because you've got North Carolina A&T coming to this game in pursuit of a perfect season.
Right.
They're ranked, number 7 in FCS, and, have just been a powerhouse in the MEAC conference. And then you have Grambling, who is also their conference champion. They're ranked number, I think, 13 in FCS. And so those are the 2 highest ranking school HBCUs in the football championship subdivision.
Right.
Both of them are coming in here. Coach Broadway was asked, what he felt about Tariq Cohen leaving and how they would recover from that. But they've got a quarterback, Raynard Leonard, who is undefeated in games that he has started in. He is 25-0 in games within which he has started. And you're going up against Devante Kincade, who's a quarterback for Grambling that has never lost to a SWAC opponent.
Right.
He's undefeated in conference. So, you got 2 great players who are leading both of their institutions and have led them to the opportunity to play for the national championship in the Celebration Bowl. This is going to be a great game. And so it's not only great when you think about the fans that are going to be there, but it's going to be a great game for people who are going to be watching this game all around the country.
Right. Well, Mr. Grant, I appreciate you for coming on and speaking with us today. Looking forward to getting down there and checking out the sites down there in Atlanta, and hopefully, my hope is just that the game is as good as as compelling as the first two, because they've definitely been fun to watch and fun to cover. As a person who cares about HBCU sports, so appreciate you again for coming on, and we'll see you in Atlanta.
Thank you. Looking forward to seeing you as well. Thank you for having me.